everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hot for Teacher. My name is Adam Coble. This is Hot for Teacher. It is sort of a relationship advice show. We kind of frame it that way. Every week that we do an episode, 3 of you send in your questions, and I answer them. And we use those as a framework to have a conversation about relationships. Relationships with ourselves, with our coworkers, our friends. We got romantic relationships. We got families. So we've been talking about all of that stuff in the last 38 weeks and change. So that's the plan for today. We're going to talk about relationships. It's interesting. So this is just a topical note for episode number 39. It's interesting. Van Halen has been kind of in the news of late, which is funny and kind of like, I guess, good for them. But people have been talking about Van Halen a lot because I guess Billie Eilish, who's a pop musician, she's just a youngster. She made a comment, I guess, in an interview somewhere where she said she hadn't heard of Van Halen or hadn't heard Van Halen, didn't know who they were. And a lot of oldsters are getting upset about that. But as a result, a lot of people have been talking about Hot for Teacher. It's been trending, and I think that's really funny. A couple of people have been like, so, Adam, your show's blowing up. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely what it is. So, needless to say, I've had Hot for Teacher stuck in my head for weeks. And, you know, it's nice to do an episode. It's nice to reattribute the phrase Van Halen. Yeah, right. That's Van Halen's other song. Somebody out there has a podcast or a talk show called Jump, and they are having the same problem that I'm having this week. But we're not here to talk about my problems, are we? We're here to talk about maybe your problems, maybe stuff that's going on in your life. We're gonna start our first question today, and I'm gonna try to get these apace because we started a little late. So our first question today is coming from a guy in trouble, which is an ominous thing to name yourself. Let's see if we can't help a guy in trouble. So, guy says, I'm sorry to ask a question like this on a show about relationships, but I think it can be applied directly to it and would really help to hear your thoughts on the matter. I'm someone not used to failing. I was lucky enough to excel at many things, including confidence in myself for relationships, and that translated pretty well to everyday life. However, today I faced my first huge failure. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. I feel lost, and even though I have friends and family supporting me, I'm honestly not used to dealing with things like this. I feel depressed, and this is coming at the end of the year, and a day after my birthday has soured me. So the question is, any thoughts on dealing with massive failures in a relationship or otherwise? Any advice from you is greatly appreciated. Keep up the good work from a guy in trouble. So Guy, here's the thing, Guy. Everybody fails. We all just biff it once in a while. We blow it. We say a stupid thing. We do something dumb. We misunderstand the situation. We take the wrong step. And we end up in a place where we look back at that promise of the future and we say, you lied to me, future past me. I had an idea of how this was going to be and I blew it. And it's a bad feeling. It's a real bad feeling, especially if, like Guy here, you're not used to it. It can be really disappointing because there's very little worse than feeling disappointed in yourself, right? It's one thing when you offer up a person or like circumstance, you offer them up a chance to show that things are okay, and then somebody else blows it, or things just don't go the way you expected them to, but it wasn't really your fault. That's one thing, right? It's one thing to be disappointed in an external source, but it's a whole other feeling. And it's so much worse to feel disappointed in yourself, whether you could have done better, you could have put in more effort, something could have been different, but it wasn't. And now here we are in Failure Town. And everybody is so glad to have you. I think the thing is here is that it's not just about failure, right? Because failure is a thing that eventually, on a long enough timeline, happens to everybody. Everybody has something they want, and they try for it, and they miss. But I think what Guy is struggling with particularly is this slap in the face feeling of it being like, wait a second, I've never fucked up like this before. That horrible feeling, to me, that sense of having screwed up or sense of having like tried for something and missed is kind of akin to, it's the emotional equivalent of going downstairs in the middle of the night to get a snack or something and forgetting how many stairs there are and going to take a step and either hitting the floor earlier than you expected or having your foot find empty air, and that whole stomach dropping, something bad just happened feeling. That to me is the same as that moment you realize like something bad happened and it's all my fault. So I guess I just want to acknowledge that, like, the thing is, guy, it's okay, right? Because just because you missed that step doesn't necessarily mean life is over. Yeah, maybe you dropped your cookies and milk on the kitchen floor. Maybe it's 3 a.m. and you're picking pieces of broken plate out of your linoleum. But like, it's cool. You can go to the store. You can buy more cookies. You can get more milk. You can go back to bed and pretend like none of this bullshit ever happened, and you can move on, right? And I think that's the thing. It's not about dealing with the failure. It's not about being like, how do I feel less bad about failure? Because honestly, like, it's always going to feel bad. Wanting anything, and this is, you know, if we want to get a little bit like Buddhist about it, wanting anything is the first thing you did wrong, right? Desiring particular outcomes, and I'm not saying this like guy has made a mistake that nobody else has ever made. This is a common human problem. This is how humans are. But you wanted something. That was your first problem, right? You had expectations. You thought this is how it's going to go, and you did it, and it turns out it did not go that way, or maybe it did not go at all, right? Maybe instead of going the way you want, it went some other horrible way. And it wouldn't sting quite so bad if you hadn't anticipated it going one way in the first place, right? If you leave your house and you're like, I must have this specific burger from this specific hamburger restaurant, that is what I must have. And you drive there and it turns out the hamburger restaurant has burned down, you're going to be mad. You're going to be upset. You're going to feel bad. But if you leave your house thinking, I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to get myself something delicious to eat, the burnt down hamburger restaurant isn't going to bother you quite so much. Now, I think a lot of us struggle with having been gifted or talented or whatever euphemism you want to use for being somehow ahead of the curve as a child, right? So I think that there is this weird parental desperation when you're a kid for your parents to be like, oh my God, you're slightly better than we expected at reading books, or you're slightly better than we expected at doing math or drawing or whatever. And all of a sudden now you're gifted and you're special and you're ahead of the curve. And the anticipation here is you will remain there. And I've talked about this before, this idea of if you get straight A's on every report card, it's going to make a B look like an F because of the pattern, right? It's human inability to perceive this stuff. So if you grew up and your parents and maybe your teachers and whoever were like, you're great. Look at you. You're reading at a 12th grade level and you're in kindergarten. Congratulations. You know, you're 6 years old and you just finished Ulysses. The thing here is that tying your identity to success means that failure is not only in and of itself negative, but it's a core violation of your identity, right? It's like failing is waking up from a drug-fueled bender when you've never smoked a joint so much as once in your life, right? You're suddenly completely fucking up your whole personal identity. And now you're saying like, oh, but I can't fail. This is inverse to my premise as a person. So I think the thing you can do here is recognize that guy, this is only the first of many failures in your life, right? You will face this feeling over and over and over again until you are dead. You will fail spectacularly. You will fail miserably, and everything in between, all the way from here to the grave. That will continue to happen to you. You are a human being like the rest of us. And that's okay, right? I think we have this weird philosophical opposition to seeing failure as like equally reasonable an outcome as success, right? Failure is a thing that happens, just like success is. And again, if you go into the world expecting to succeed, if you go into the world assuming that everything is going to go the way you expect it to, then it's going to be very surprising. It's going to feel like getting hit by a bus when you fuck up, right? So I think the thing is what you want to do, guy, is divest yourself from the idea that you are a person who does not fail. Because you did, and that's okay. It doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't mean you have to obsess over how to come back from being a regular failure. Because again, we all are, right? You're not being dragged down from Olympus to dwell amongst mortals. You were always down here in the dirt with us. You just didn't have an opportunity to fail. And in that way, really, the only thing you're failing at is being prepared to fail. So how do we do that? How do we prepare to fail, right? So I honestly, and I know this is an office hours answer, but seriously, it's better to play to find out what happens, right? Don't anticipate or expect success if you can manage it, but look at the outcome, the results of whatever you're doing as a surprise, right? Don't identify yourself as a person who succeeds or a person who fails. Just look at yourself as being a person. And look at the outcomes of your action as being the result of your action, right? It doesn't have to be about success or failure. Like, yeah, it's not possible to exempt ourselves from the idea that we imagine what a future might be like. There's nothing wrong with having aspirations or being ambitious or trying to accomplish certain things, but you can't hinge your self-esteem on success. Don't look at success as being this black and white, no gradient thing. So here's the thing for me is like, if I'm trying to think of situations for me where like I want something to happen a certain way. Maybe I want to go somewhere or do something and I can't do it, right? I anticipate being able to let's use an analogy. So I want to go see a movie and I'm really excited about it. And I would like to go see it on opening night, because that's, I don't know, really special. And it'd be really fun for me. And I think about it and I plan for it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy tickets. And I try to buy the tickets and they're sold out. And there's nothing I can do. There's no theaters. I've lost the opportunity to go see this movie on opening night. I'll never have another chance. The movie only ever opens once and I will not be able to be there. I'm going to see people talking about it. I'm going to see people getting excited about it. That's going to make me feel bad about having missed it. I'm going to be angry at myself for not buying tickets earlier. But like, what is the point of all of that, right? Like, what is that who benefits from me feeling anxious? Who benefits from me being upset with myself, me being upset at circumstance, me beating myself up for not getting on it earlier? I should have known better, right? There's no benefit for anyone for me to do that, right? And it's easy to beat yourself up about it. It's easy to feel like you failed, and certainly there is some value in when you're a little further away from the feeling of depression, the feeling of sourness. Give it some time, right? Give it some time, and then talk it out with somebody you trust, right? Have a conversation about it. Talk about your feelings with a counselor or a partner or a close friend, and tell them like, hey, so this thing happened and I screwed up and I feel bad about it. Give yourself some room to process it. See if there's some lessons in there, but don't treat failure like like it's a good thing. Like, don't treat suffering like, oh, well, I'm going to learn, right? Suffering builds character, right? It doesn't. Fuck that. Life is full of misery. You don't need to go piling on it with your own internally targeted sadness, right? So here's the thing for me, and again, everybody deals with this stuff differently. Don't go looking for excuses to feel bad, but also like let yourself feel bad, right? Like recognize that it's totally valid for you to be disappointed. It's okay for you to want to beat yourself up about it, right? To be like, stupid, I could have done better. But like, don't let that break you apart. Everybody fails. And the scariest thing isn't failure, right? The thing isn't that if you try to do something and you blow it, that's the worst feeling. It's not that. That isn't the worst thing. The worst thing is later down the line when you want to try something or you want to do something or you want to reach for some goal and you're too scared because you don't feel comfortable with failing. The more you're able to live in that feeling of failure, the more that you're able to like internalize and process that and recognize it as something not entirely unhealthy and not have it destroy you, the more comfortable you're going to be. And that's going to allow you to try new stuff. It's going to allow you to keep pushing forward. Now, I know a lot of this is surface, right? But basically what I'm saying is don't take failure so seriously that it upends your whole life and makes you miserable, right? Don't let failure redefine you as a person. But in the same way, don't let being successful define you either. Allow yourself room to both succeed and fail and learn from both things, right? Don't let yourself get buried under the fear that you should not try other stuff. It's hard. It's hard to fail. It sucks, especially if you're not used to failing. But honestly, life is just a series of events that occur in one way or another, and trying to decide whether any given thing is a success or a failure is it's bananas. There are more important things to worry about, like whether we are being kind or whether we feel loved or whatever, than am I successful? There's a lot wrapped up in this. I could do a whole episode about feeling successful versus feeling like a failure, and maybe I will. I'm sure it'll come up again. But Guy, don't worry, it happens to everybody. You'll get better at failing the more you do it. So keep it up. I don't know, fuck something up today. Find something today that you can screw up and do it. I feel like Tyler Durden. But honestly, like, do something wrong on purpose and just see how it feels. Like, obviously, don't go out and like fail to rob a bank or something. But you know, find something little you can fuck up. Be late for something. I don't know. Life is imperfect. Better get used to it, I guess. So this second question, this is maybe the longest question that I've ever fielded on Hot for Teacher, and I tried yesterday to shorten it or truncate it or whatever, but I actually think that the whole of the text is significant enough that I do want to read all of it, and then we'll try to summarize and talk about the points. It's nuanced, so yeah. Also for Guy, if you're looking for a list of things you could screw up today, go listen to the classic Weird Al song, Dare to Be Stupid, and then just pick like 3 or 4 things from that song and do them. All right, question number 2 from Russ. Here we go. Ready up, everybody. I haven't had sex or even the potential of a serious or intimate relationship in 3 years. I believe this has been self-imposed. I'm a graduate student and my focus on research has been all-consuming. I'm not an incel. It's my choice to not have sex. I don't have any sexual angst against women. I'm also not asexual. I still have pangs of lust and desires to cuddle and touch butts. I just feel that having romantic relations with another human being is hugely distracting. It's been my experience that work productivity goes way down when I have a significant other. My concern is this. There's a strong correlation between my lack of sexual activeness and my lack of befriending women, platonic or otherwise. Alternatively, it's about a 1-to-1 ratio of sexy times and closeness with a woman. with a woman. I haven't gotten close platonically or sexually with a person of a different gender since my last girlfriend. Correlation doesn't equal causation, but this trend is still disconcerting. Maybe I need to chill out with my work-life balance being so out of whack. Maybe I need to place myself into situations or environments where I'm not surrounded by cis white dudes who are just like me. I'll take any advice you have for finding and making connections with others who are different than me. But my real question is, how do I kill this seemingly subconscious idea or trend that connections with differently gendered humans are only worth being made if there's sexual intercourse involved? There's the question. This is the thing I want to talk about. The other stuff, not so much. I've been recognizing toxic masculinity traits in myself, and I'm actively trying to replace them with healthy traits. This is the most insidious of introspective realizations I've had, and it must be, as you might say, crumpled up into a tiny little ball and then yeeted into the sun. I want nothing to do with it. Russ. So, Russ, congratulations on acknowledging and recognizing that stuff. The thing I really want to talk about here isn't like there's a lot, right? Russ talks about how do you maintain relationships when your work-life balance is all weird? How do you get close to people of other genders? How do you meet them? How do you meet people that are not like you, whether gender or race or culture or whatever? But what this question is really like, and what runs as a thread under it, is this thing about placing value on sexual relationships with women and undervaluing non-sexual relationships with women. Now, this is the thing, Russ. You're right in pointing out that this is a toxic masculinity issue to a degree. It's a misogyny issue as well. Because I think what happens here, and again, like, keep in mind, this is my Dan Carlin. I'm not a historian. I'm a fan of history. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a psychologist here. I'm just a fan of people and relationships. But I think that this is a product of the way that we societally look at women, right? Women are, in many cultures, and to varying degrees within those cultures, treated as objects, right? And I don't just mean, like, here's a sexy picture of a lady in a bikini in a magazine. I mean, we often treat women, without realizing we're doing so, treat women the same way we would treat commodities, like a fancy car or an expensive watch. We treat sex with women as a prize or a gift or something to be obtained and controlled and owned, right? It's a reward for engaging with a woman intimately, right? That there is this narrative of, if you behave certain ways, you will be rewarded with access to a woman. And I think, like, I'm not accusing Russ of consciously believing this. Obviously, Russ is self-aware enough to be like, there is an insidious pattern in my thoughts and feelings that is making me treat women like objects, right? And there's lots and lots of deep-seated socio-historical bullshit around why we feel like that. And I'm not going to be able to solve the patriarchy alone. Sorry, I wish that I could, but I'm one person. I think the way that we combat this is we stop, as individuals, we actively stop behaving and thinking that way. So, Russ, recognizing that there is this insidious pattern that you are prioritizing in your mind women who you could have a relationship with, women you could have sex with, and you're treating them as more desirable and more interesting and more valid than necessarily people that you can't. And I would say, rather than pursuing sexual intimacy with women right now, having this in mind, like, just make some friends, right? Like, just engage women without thinking like this is an option, right? Set aside your desire for a sex partner or a relationship partner, right? Take those priorities and set them aside and engage with women in friendship. Engage them as equals. Engage them as people. Treat them as you would someone where you don't have that deep-seated toxic bullshit percolating under the surface, right? Like, it sounds so asinine to say, but honestly, like, just have conversations with women and be around them and make friends with them and do activities with them and treat them like people. And pretty quickly, you will realize that that is what they are and that it doesn't give them more value if you can obtain them as a relationship or sexual object, right? Ideally, romance is just a subset of the vast and beautiful rainbow of kinds of relationships that we can have with each other, right? Ultimately, sex is an activity that we can do with certain kinds of people that we are in certain types of relationships with, right? It's not the be all and end all. It's not the end result. Persona be damned. We don't get rewarded with Christmas Eve after we've maxed out our social links with a woman, right? It's not about that. I think the thing to do here is to try to treat people like they have value inherently because they are human beings with experiences and with feelings and with things to share with you that aren't a sense of romantic security or safety or a sense of fulfillment in that way, and treat them as if sex is not a thing that is the end result or end goal. Now, this isn't to vilify wanting to have sex or pursuing sexual relationships. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in romantic relationships. There's nothing wrong with meeting someone and thinking this person is hot, and if they want to have sex with me, I'd love to have sex with them. That's completely fine. I'm just saying that sometimes if that's what's dominating your mind, it's nice to just set it aside, right? To just like take a break from pursuing it. And again, it's not like Russ is saying like, I'm out here dating the ladies trying to get laid. Like, ooh, I'm just having a hard time. Adam, help me out. It's like, it's been a long time. I'm prioritizing this stuff, but I recognize that there is this toxic through line of valuing relationships that are potentially romantic or sexual above others. And for me, personally, that's not a priority, right? Like, romance isn't really a thing that I give a shit about, but close, intimate relationships, some of which contain physical or sexual components to that intimacy, those are a priority to me. And when it comes down to it, a relationship that I can dig into, a relationship I can deepen, is going to be more valuable and more pursued than a relationship I can't, right? Like, somebody that I just don't have any chemistry with, they're not going to likely be on my list of people I want to spend a ton of time with. And that's fine. That's completely okay. But we get to make choices about the ways that we engage with people in the world, right? Like, we get choices like what we're going to wear, whether or not we are going to work through lunch or if we're going to take a break. We get to decide all kinds of things throughout our day. And I deny the idea that we can't also control the way we act around people that we think that we're in love with or people we are sexually interested in. I think that there is this myth that if you feel something towards someone, you are somehow beholden to yourself and the greater romantic narrative to pursue them. Whereas I think that you can hang out with somebody, you can acknowledge like, hey, I have certain feelings about this person that either they don't reciprocate or I'm not interested in pursuing. You can ignore them and those feelings will go away. In the same way, you can make yourself like someone more by doing certain things. Like, these are known facts, right? There are things that cause our brains to attach to other human beings, including the kinds of contact we have with them, the time we spend with them, what kinds of ritualized behaviors we perform together. Those things all reinforce what we consider to be love in our brain, right? So we can actively choose to engage or not engage in those things. So what I think my biggest point of advice for Russ would have to be is like, get out, meet people, engage with them, but don't go looking for dates right now, right? Like, get out there and make some friends, try to get a better handle on how you relate to people outside of the sexual/romantic paradigm. See what that feels like. I think that we have, and I think this is like obviously a huge truism, we have such a complicated relationship when it comes to sex and romance, and we have so much conditioning around what to expect. Gender plays a huge role in this. And the idea that we look at relationships in a certain light based on our perceptions of gender and gender role is like, it's totally normal. Like, it's a thing. It's not great. It'd be cool if we could rid ourselves of that stuff. But as it stands, like, that's informing Russ's feelings about women in general, right? So that's the thing, right? Is recognizing that there is value in having relationships with people you could be having sex with, but that you're not. But you could. You could maybe pursue that. But you're not, because you're teaching yourself that people have value beyond that. And eventually you're going to recognize that, right? You're going to be in these relationships, and you're going to look at your relationships. You're going to come home from hanging out with somebody, and you're going to think, man, she is great. She is so cool and smart and fun, and like getting to hang out and do things together is really valuable to me. I really value this person as a friend. And that feeling is going to kind of like, it's kind of like what I was saying to Guy, right, in the first question. You do have to practice things. You have to practice things to teach your brain how to be good at them. So I think that men especially, we need to do the work to unwrite all of the bad advice that society has given us, right? We have been told a certain way to behave around women, and we continue to be told that. It's not like that message is stopped, and we need to do the work to rewrite it. Now, again, I'm not saying that you can't go out there and have sex and be in romantic relationships with women, not by a long shot, but recognizing that it is one of a many hued rainbow of options when engaging in a relationship with someone, right? I will say this as like a kind of side, a sort of side statement about this particular question. So Russ, at the beginning, Russ says, I haven't had sex or even had the potential of a serious or intimate relationship in 3 years. I believe this has been self-imposed. I'm a graduate student, and my focus on research has been all-consuming, right? Russ knows that when Russ is in a relationship, he focuses very deeply on that relationship, and it takes him away from his other stuff. But I want to just say this, Russ, that yes, intimate, serious, intensive relationships with other people, they do take time. They take time and energy, and you got to navigate that. But there's no reason, I mean, there are some reasons, but there should be no reason for a person who wants to have sex to have to go 3 years without it because they're afraid of all the work that has to go into building a relationship. This is me ultimately just leading up to the whole decriminalize sex work, treat sex workers like workers, stop making that shit criminal. Like we should be able to. This is a thing, and as a culture, if we weren't so fucking backwards about sex, you could just pay somebody, right? Like if somebody came to me and said, I haven't had a massage in 3 years, I just don't have the time and energy to go out there and to meet a masseuse and to build a relationship with this masseuse and to like move in with them and meet their parents just so I can get a massage. If somebody said that to you, you'd be like, just fucking go get a massage, man. Just go pay for it. In the same way, we should be able to pay sex workers for their work. They should not have to be forced to do their jobs in the shadow of the law, etc. Right? So I guess that's the side part of this question, but it's all tied into the same fundamental stuff. What Russ is struggling with, I think, to some degree or another, most people struggle from one side of this debate or the other. I do think it's really interesting as a matter of like personal bias too, seeing how this feeling interacts with people who are trans, people who are non-binary, right? Like we have all of our narratives around this stuff are built on the gender binary, right? They're built on like men are this way, women are this way. That's the story. Here's some bad advice, go follow it. But I love, and this is what, God bless all of my non-binary and trans friends for bucking that narrative, right? For being an embodiment of the gaps in that shitty story. And I think it's interesting to see the ways that socialization collides with non-binary and trans people and gets angry because the narrative has nothing to say, right? It's like, well, you're either a pursuer or pursued, but you don't fit into this box in any way. And I think that this can be a really good opportunity to look inward and sort of process the ways in which we look at trans and non-binary people, right? Because it's an opportunity to say when there is a gap in the story, you fill it yourself, right? This is a way, there's a reason I let Russ kind of ramble on like this and I didn't cut it down. It's because there's so much in this question that I think is important and valuable and worth thinking and talking about, right? Like what stories are we taught and who teaches them to us and who benefits from us behaving that way? It's a really important thing to think about when you are doing self-examination, when you're feeling things. I personally have found that to be a really nice, sometimes it just leads to more frustration, but a really nice way to look at the things I think are true, right? Who benefits, right? When you think something negative about yourself or you act a way that feels uncomfortable and you look at it and you say, if I keep doing this, who benefits, right? Who gains from this? So I guess the thing is, Russ, is like, you're already on the right track. You're thinking about this, you're ruling out certain feelings, you're adding more. My advice for you, Russ, is socialize, right? Take a step back from your research if you can, or like finish it and then look forward to a time where you can go out and make friends, right? Engage with people with no preconceived idea of what that relationship might become, right? This is what I hate about dating. Dating presupposes you're going to end up in one of a couple of places rather than just letting the relationship evolve naturally. So my thought here is set that stuff aside, set the narrative aside, get out into the world, have conversations with women, make some friends who are women, non-binary people who are not men, and find value in them that isn't, will this person be my girlfriend? Will this person touch my genitals? Right? Now, I'm not saying, never do that, but like prioritize other stuff for a while first, because it can be hard to be thinking about a behavior while you're performing it. And I'm lingering on this question quite a bit because it's something that I think about a lot too, because honestly, Russ, I do this. Like I too have been socialized to prioritize intimate relationships over all other relationships, because I'm part of the same narrative you are. And this is something I think about a lot, right? Valuing the people in your life who will not lead to money, sex, or romance, right? Putting value in people who give you other things helps expand the way you look at your friends, right? So do that, right? Think about that. Think about what that looks like and build intimacy with people that doesn't necessarily prescribe that narrative for you and for your relationship. And I think you'll find it rewarding, but it is going to take practice, right? Because you're going to be friends with someone and you're going to start feeling strong feelings about them. And you're going to think, is this love? Do I want to touch your butt? Is that what's going on? Examine that intensity, because I think you can feel intense intimacy or intense desire to be around someone without it having to be like, let's do a sex at each other, right? Yeah. Friends, community, treating people like people. Try to find intimacy that isn't butt related. But it is hard. You're combating a standing narrative, right? Our third question for today comes from Magnus. And it's, I'm going to have a lot of monogamy feelings for this question. Yeah, let's just, I'll let Magnus explain. So the problem I have is that I got a friend, let's call him Jeff, I assume because his name is Jeff, who I play in a band with. Jeff and Magnus, they're in a band. Jeff had a bad breakup with his girlfriend. Let's call her Laura, because her name is Laura. You could just say her name is Laura. I wouldn't know the difference. You could lie to me. So the problem I have is that I have a friend, Jeff, who I play in a band with. Jeff had a bad breakup with Laura a couple of years ago. Now, I knew Laura before she got in a relationship with Jeff, and there'd been a bit of chemistry between us. So about 6 months after Jeff and Laura broke up, I was thinking about asking Laura out, but I wanted to talk to Jeff first just to see how that'd make him feel. Jeff told me he would no longer consider me a friend if I dated Laura. At that time, I valued Jeff's friendship higher than a potential romantic relationship with Laura. Now, a couple of days ago, I went out with some friends, where Laura also was. We ended up talking for a couple of hours, and I felt that chemistry again. Now I'm not sure what to do. On the one hand, I want to respect Jeff's feelings, but on the other hand, I don't think it's a reasonable thing to demand. That somehow, because he dated her, he now controls if I'm allowed to date her and uses our friendship to strong-arm me. Love to hear your talks. And I always feel you give me new ways to look at stuff. Well, thank you, Magnus. So first of all, fuck off, Jeff. I mean, Jeff has internalized some shitty narratives. The funny thing here, too, though, is that, like, Magnus is sort of talking about Laura like she's property, too. Like, Magnus is clearly coming to me with a problem here, and I'm not here to drag Magnus over the coals, but, like, it's two men talking about who gets to own this lady, right? Like, Jeff, I have come to you with an offering of 1 goat. If you take this goat, it allows me to date Laura. Do you accept my goat? And Jeff is like, no, Magnus, you must bring me 3 goats, lest I destroy our friendship. Like, it's not like, here's the thing. What Jeff wants doesn't really matter. It's pretty much irrelevant, except that you actually care about Jeff. And that's the thing, right? That's the thing. So what has happened here is everybody's trying. Well, not everybody. Laura apparently doesn't get to say anything, but that's fine. Magnus, I would like to know what Laura has to say about this. Like, have you talked to Laura about this? Like, have you? Because you should. But anyway, we don't have that information. So here's the thing, Magnus. Yeah, you're in a band. You care about your band, right? You care about your buddy Jeff. Jeff is also in the band. That's good. That's important. Men caring about each other and respecting each other's feelings. Awesome. Good. Do that. It sucks that this is such a normative narrative about, am I allowed to date Laura? What you're really saying here, what you're really asking Jeff is, Jeff, bro, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Jeff, I care about you, and I care about upsetting you, right? I care about if the things that I do hurt you. I don't want to hurt you, Jeff, because I care about you, because you're my friend. But Jeff, I'm having feelings about Laura, and I know that if I pursue those feelings, that might cause you stress, my dude. That might hurt your feelings. You might be reminded about how you're not with Laura anymore. You might look at me and think I'm angry that Magnus likes this person that I can't be in a relationship with anymore. And that's going to make me feel lonely and sad and upset. Right. And so Jeff responds by saying, bro, I would no longer consider you a friend if you dated Laura. And like, honestly, if Jeff is saying, Magnus, bro, I care about you too. You are my friend. I value our friendship. If you date Laura, it will hurt me deeply. And I might not be able to be friends with you. It might be too painful for me. Right. And then Magnus is saying like, shit, what do I do? Because I'm interested in this relationship with Laura, but it's going to hurt Jeff. So here's the thing. First of all, nobody owns Laura, right? Laura isn't Jeff's property. Laura isn't Magnus's property. I think Magnus knows that. I think ultimately, somewhere deep down, Jeff knows that too. This isn't, you know what? This isn't even about Laura, right? I'm just going to, since we don't have Laura's voice, we don't know what Laura wants, post this conversation, whatever happens with Magnus and Jeff, Magnus has a separate thing going on, right, with Laura. What I want to focus on here is the relationship between Magnus and Jeff, right? Because that's really what this is about, right? Magnus cares about Jeff enough that this is a thing. He's feeling hurt, right? Magnus is feeling hurt because Jeff is not being supportive. Jeff is feeling hurt because he thinks Magnus isn't being supportive. And my heart goes out to these two sweet bros that I just want to help them like get to a place where Jeff recognizes like, Magnus, bro, I care about you and I want you to be happy, right? And Magnus wants Jeff to be happy. And what I would love to see happen here is for Jeff to say, dude, I'm going to therapy. I'm having a conversation with my counselor about this. I'm learning tools to help me better process my trauma from my relationship with Laura. I'm working on myself. You are your own person. I want you to pursue your dreams, man. If you want to have a relationship with Laura and Laura wants to have a relationship with you, Jeff, would like the two of you to also be happy. Ideally, all three of you can just be okay, but it does require that Jeff be self-aware enough to recognize that you talking to him about this isn't you asking permission to take over ownership of a thing he no longer has. That's not what this is about. This is about you, Magnus, acknowledging that you want something that might hurt Jeff and you care about Jeff enough that you want to like engage, you want to talk. That's hard. And we, as men, don't have a lot of practice with those conversations. It's not something that we are very good at. And Jeff is hurting, Magnus, and Jeff is flailing around, and Jeff is hurting you because he himself is hurting, right? So here's the thing. Nobody should let Jeff run their life. Laura shouldn't. Magnus shouldn't. The only person that Jeff is in charge of is Jeff. Now, this doesn't mean that we should disrespect Jeff's boundaries. It doesn't mean that we should ignore Jeff's feelings, but socialized behavior, right? Toxic masculinity in particular, socialized behavior is kind of like mental illness in that the patriarchy, dear men in the audience, the patriarchy is not our fault. We did not invent it. We did not foist it upon the people that it hurts, including ourselves, but it is, as men, our responsibility to do better with, right? It is our job to do better than the narratives we have been given. And I think we can, right? I think that Magnus and Jeff can be open and vulnerable with each other, and they can build forward from their relationship from here, right? Because this isn't about Laura. This is about Jeff and a need for proven loyalty This is about Magnus and a feeling of needing to be supported and not having ultimatums slapped down on their relationship. And I think that's a thing that Jeff and Magnus can work on as friends. Now, they might come to a place, Jeff, Magnus, you might come to a place where you say, I would like you to support me in my romantic life. I would like you to be happy for me that I'm pursuing relationships. I want you to be stoked for me that this might be a thing, right? And Jeff is saying, dude, I don't want you to hurt me. I'm already in pain. And you know it would hurt me if you date Laura, but it's not about Laura. It's about my insecurity. And I'm going to work on getting over that. But right now I need you to not. I'm putting up a boundary. I think it's completely reasonable. It's totally, totally reasonable for Jeff to say, these are the things that will allow me to be friends with you. And while I wouldn't say it, and it certainly doesn't feel that way for me, Jeff is technically, not even technically, Jeff is allowed to put up a boundary that says, if you date Laura, I can't be friends with you. It's just not, it's sad because you're going to lose Magnus, and Magnus cares about you, Jeff, right? It's obvious. So try not to get to that place. Try not to put up that boundary. It's a fair and reasonable boundary. It sucks, but Magnus, Jeff might just not be able to get over it. And that, I want Jeff to do better. I want Jeff to be able to get over this. I want the two of you to be friends, and I want your band to continue to rock on. But yeah, I think this is an important conversation about how boundaries work, right? We have to know when we're putting up a boundary that it is about us and not about the outside world, that we're not trying to manipulate the world by putting up boundaries. It's then Magnus's choice whether to say, I respect that boundary and I care about you as a friend, and I will accept that boundary as a constraint on my behavior. But Jeff should not be trying to boss Magnus around. There's a lot of emotional subtext that obviously we're missing here. There's a third person who just isn't getting to be involved in the conversation. And I think that's the thing, right? So Magnus, you're doing the right thing by giving a shit, but you are ultimately going to have to decide how much to engage with Jeff and how much you are willing to let Jeff define your actions with his boundaries. That's your choice, right? Both of you have that choice. Just like Laura has the choice to not date either of you if that's where she's at, right? Yeah, it's tough. I want the knee-jerk reaction is to be like, Jeff doesn't own Laura. Jeff should just get over it, which is true. Jeff doesn't own Laura. But getting over things is hard, and being a person is difficult. And both Magnus and Jeff are struggling with some social narrative stuff they're trying to get through. I think you just need to keep talking, right? Encourage Jeff to grow as a person. Encourage Jeff to see a counselor. Talk about it. Talk about it with Laura, right? Tell Laura how you feel. Just engage. Right? Meet people where they're at, try to understand why they're like that, and then make decisions around your own life. Nobody else gets to tell you what to do, not even Jeff. But if you care about Jeff, which it sounds like you do, let him in, right? I don't think Jeff is trying to control you. I think Jeff is just hurting and lashing out. Now, that's Jeff's responsibility, right? Jeff, get your shit together. Man, get over it. Get help. Look, Magnus cares about you, Jeff. I have high hopes for the relationship of Magnus and Jeff. But yeah, there's a lot there, right? Engage. Talk it out together. Right? Hell, go to therapy together. Go to friend couple therapy. Have somebody mediate that conversation. Yeah. So yeah. Whew, that's a lot, hey? It's a lot. But I mean, these are honestly like pretty, if not universal, but pretty common things to handle. A lot of kind of philosophical throughput in this episode. But that's it. That's our episode for today. This has been episode number 39 of Hot for Teacher. If you want to submit a question, go to my website, www.adam-koble.com. Click on the Hot for Teacher link, fill out the form, submit your question. And in a few weeks, we'll do another episode and we'll talk some more about our feelings. Whew. Thanks for coming, everybody. We will see you next time.